Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's not often, but it happens, not often, but that an NDP MP stands in the House and thanks a Conservative Member of Parliament. And it's even rarer, I think, that a politician stands up in the House of Commons and acknowledges their ignorance. This evening, I'm going to do both. I want to thank the MP for Abbotsford, who my colleague from Edmonton Strathcona has told me is a good egg. Those are her words. The sponsor of the motion 111 that calls for the establishment of the Mennonite Heritage Week. It is because of this honourable colleague's motion that gave me the opportunity to find out more about the Mennonite community and its history, specifically in my riding and in my province. And in that research, I discovered how unaware I was of the many, many ways the Mennonite community has made a positive difference in the lives of the people of Saskatchewan, and specifically the lives of the people in my riding of Saskatoon West. In my comments, Madam Speaker, I'm going to focus on sort of one aspect of the motion that says that we'll celebrate during Mennonite Heritage Week the richness of the Mennonite culture and their role in promoting peace and justice at home and abroad. And just to save face a little bit, Madam Speaker, it isn't that I was unaware of the work I'm about to highlight in my community, but what I was unaware of is the fact that many programs in my community had their very beginnings in the Mennonite community. Madam Speaker, this year, 2019, is the private refugee sponsorship program. This year, the private refugee sponsorship program turns 40. For over 40 years, Canadians have been opening their hearts, their communities, and their wallets to help refugees from all over the world come to Canada and start new lives. It's a program that's been modeled by 7 other countries in the world. Today, the private refugee sponsorship program has welcomed and settled over 275,000 people over and above those refugees assisted by our government. In 1979, the International Development and Relief Agency of the Mennonite Central Committee negotiated a groundbreaking agreement to help Ottawa match Vietnamese families with private sponsors and bring them to Canada as permanent residents. This sponsorship agreement was signed in March of 1979, and many would remember why many in Canada, including those from the Mennonite communities, were seized with this work. After the Vietnam War, over 1 million refugees fled the war-ravaged countries of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Those Vietnamese who took to the ocean in tiny, overcrowded ships were dubbed the Boat People. The survivors sometimes languished for years in refugee camps. It was the response and the leadership of the Mennonite community in Canada that found Canada was able to welcome over 60,000 refugees. And it led the way for other churches and other communities to sponsor privately refugees to come to Canada. It was a first. Today, our ability to reach out to Syrian refugees as Canadians is because of the leadership of the Mennonite community that sought a way to help those suffering from war to come to Canada and to come to safety. In 2014, the Mennonite Central Committee of Saskatchewan celebrated 50 years of great work and service to communities across Saskatchewan. And thanks to the coordinating efforts of the Mennonite Historical Society of Saskatchewan, that history of great work has been preserved and is accessible on the internet to everyone, even politicians in need of an education. This resource is where I learned of an organization I have worked with throughout my entire career at the United Way, and now, as a Member of Parliament, had its roots in the Mennonite community. Madam Speaker, for 21 years, Global Gathering Place has been providing support and just an array of services for newcomers, immigrants, and refugees in Saskatoon. Global Gathering Place is an important settlement service in my community and a critical organization that helps newcomers succeed, and it was started by the Mennonites in Saskatchewan. I'm ashamed to say I didn't know of its beginning in the Mennonite community. So, 21 years ago, the MCC of Saskatchewan, with a small amount of funds, a box of toys, another box with coffee and supplies, and with one awesome woman, Thelma Pogrug, who started out as a volunteer on the steering committee, they started the Global Gathering Place. The Mennonite Central Committee of Saskatchewan supported the Global Gathering Place sort of under its umbrella for several years until it became a standalone organization. And to her credit, and lucky for us, Belma is still at the helm. The organization has grown a lot, providing more support to more newcomers each and every year. Thousands of people, in fact, each and every year. Throughout my career at United Way and now as a Member of Parliament, I have come to count on Belma Global Gathering to help me help others. The Canadian Food Grains Bank is another initiative with its roots in the Mennonite community, the Mennonite farming community, and rooted in the values of peace, cooperation, and respect for human rights. The Canadian Food Grains Bank started as the Mennonite Food Grain Bank, but in 1983, 15 other churches and faith-based organizations joined together and they created the Canadian Food Grains Bank. During the 50th anniversary of MCC in Saskatchewan, the Canadian Food Grains work in Saskatchewan was celebrated, including the over $1.76 million donated to the work of the Canadian Food Grains Bank from Saskatchewan, including over $500,000 from Mennonite churches. This May, I was pleased to have a walk and talk meeting. We were walking and talking because I was in a rush and they were too, with Saul and Janessa and Holly, who were constituents of mine and university student volunteers from World Renew, one of the partners with the Canadian Food Grains Bank. They came to remind me that they planned to vote in the next election, and so they wanted to know if I'd supported the Canadian Food Grains Bank and Canada's role in international development. And they pressed me to continue to advocate and support Canada meeting its international commitment to development funding, or the 0.7% of our GDP. I said I would, and I want to thank Saul, Janessa, and Holly for keeping the pressure on governments to follow through on this important commitment, and of course for their personal commitment to Canada's leadership in international development. Madam Speaker, I want to close with my gratitude for the work of Mennonite churches and the Mennonite Central Committee to support those in prison. Human beings many of us choose to forget. The MCON Mission is an ecumenical, non-profit, faith-based organization in Saskatchewan that provides support to current and formerly incarcerated people. The mission's beginning came out of the restorative justice work of MCC of Saskatchewan. The work has been being done since 1974, but the work is done predominantly on a volunteer basis with some 50-plus volunteers offering over 3,000 hours a year and offering their time and compassion to 3 programs that make up the MCON Mission Ministry. Person-to-Person and Community Chaplaincy Program connects volunteers with individuals both within and outside correctional institutions through visitation, opportunities, and support for transition back into the community. The third program, called Circles of Support and Accountability, works with people who've been incarcerated as sexual offenders and are transitioning back into the community. The intention is to address the risk of reoffense while keeping both the community and the formerly incarcerated individuals safe. Madam Speaker, I've only barely touched, on the impact of the Mennonite community in Saskatoon West, and just saying thank you seems sort of small in comparison to the impact. I've never been a very good closer, ending my speeches. I'd never make a very good salesperson. So I thought I would close with the words from Ryan Siemens, who during the 50th anniversary of MCC Saskatchewan wanted to thank the Mennonite community for all their work, and he says, "Your ongoing support makes this work possible. But it wouldn't happen unless folks felt a call in their lives to meet Christ in this surprising way. Yes, we hear how the media portrays inmates, but when the stigma is removed, when the labels have been dropped, and you are visiting, drinking coffee, and eating a chocolate bar, you will see the person across the table is a human being, made in the image of God, in need of friendship and forgiveness, community and hope, just like the rest of us." Thank you, Madam Speaker.